Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the 18th episode of The Smartest People in the Room. If you've been following this series, you understand what we're doing, shining a light on incredibly smart, accomplished people and helping them share stories from their careers and lives, as well as anecdotes about their past, present, and future. Before we get started, let me take care of a little bit of business. First, I want to make sure the audience understands what we are all about here, and that is networking. The reason we do these webinars is twofold. First, we want to showcase really smart people and the amazing work that they're doing day to day in the music industry. But the second reason is a bit more nuanced. We love to help people make more connections in the industry so they can further their own careers. Who Knew is all about helping to facilitate networking, and this online format is the same. We feature speakers like the two we have today. We put them in front of the audience and invite connectivity in hopes that everyone benefits. So please take advantage of this unique access to the speakers and the rest of the audience by engaging with everyone in the chat window at the bottom of your screen. Also, please submit questions you'd like for Chris and Kerry to address during their conversation. We will respond to as many as we can as we go along. I'd like to also thank our sponsors. Thank you for your support, both dollars and in-kind donations. First, I want to thank First Horizon Bank, Bufkin Baker, Four Roses Bourbon, the Fairlane Hotel, Core Power Yoga, the Tennessee Entertainment Commission, Lightning 100, Tennessee Brew Works, Moo TV, Jive Printing, Project Music, and Also Organics. Today, I am honored to be broadcasting my portion of these proceedings from one of Nashville's most important and iconic venues, the Basement. The OG Basement, as it's called, has been one of Nashville's premier small venues and has presented the best in local, regional, and national acts for over 15 years. They've hosted showcases that have landed Casey Musgraves and the Brothers Osborne lucrative contracts. And in 2008, along with Grimey's Records, the Basement hosted a secret performance with Metallica, which the band released as a live record. If These Walls Could Talk has never rung more true. Co-owners Mike Grimes and Dave Brown remain passionate and love the business and businesses and helping up-and-comers. They are lifers. The Basement has just launched a GoFundMe to help raise funds to cover outstanding rent due to the closure during COVID-19. Funds are needed to bring them current with the landlord. All donations are appreciated and will help them continue their mission of developing local and regional and national talent. The GoFundMe campaign is there on the screen right now. On a related front, I want to also share another important way fans can support the Basement and other indie venues like it across the country. The National Independent Venue Association is lobbying Congress for help right now. It's easy to join by visiting their website, which is nevaassoc.org. As you see that, Save Our Stages URL on your screen. NEVA launched the Save Our Stages campaign on social media and has a simple form letter on their website that anyone can customize and send to their lawmakers in Congress. It's free, it's easy, and it's effective. Please make your voice heard by hitting the site and follow the steps to reach out to your legislators. Now, let's get on with today's program. Today's interviewer is a Who Knew alum and all-around brand marketing genius, Mr. Carrie Graham. To read his entire bio, including all the awards he's won, would take too much time, but here's a few highlights. Carrie earned his BA in English and drama at Vanderbilt University and was a professional actor for 4 years before beginning an advertising career that has taken him from junior copywriter to agency CEO, from Atlanta to Boston, New York, and South Carolina, and finally back to Nashville. Kerry worked at several Mad Men agencies, including J. Walter Thompson and Hill Holiday Boston. He's won numerous national and international industry awards, including One Show, Clio's, British Design and Art Direction, Communication Arts, EFFIES, and National Addies. Kerry was also selected Copywriter of the Year 4 times in 3 different cities and has written a novel called Pitching the God Account about a fictional ad agency in Nashville. In 1993, Kerry launched his own agency, Campaign Inc., which became agency of record for the 1996 Summer Olympic Games in Atlanta and featured work for Jack Nicklaus, Arnold Palmer, Tommy Hilfiger, Reebok, Turner Broadcasting, and the Weather Channel. After selling his company to the Bunton Group in 1997, Kerry moved his family to Music City and became that agency's vice chairman and chief creative officer. In January of '07, Kerry was named president of Bohan Agency, and after several years of extraordinary growth, he was named vice chairman and CEO. A pioneer of unique organizational models and creative approaches throughout his career, Kerry began experimenting with new agency structures for the underserved and undermarketed strata of savvy, mid-sized clients and brands in 2014. One in particular designed specifically for the project-based assignments and a swap of marketing expertise and senior staff time for corporate equity and a share of sales revenues became the model for the Brand Hotel LLC in 2015. Today, the Brand Hotel has worked with nearly 40 clients from California to Venice, Italy, several of which the agency has taken equity positions in. Most recently, the Brand Hotel authored Nashville's pitch for the Amazon HQ2 pitch for Nashville, landing the company's coveted retail hub for the city. The award-winning agency also handles esports assignments for Nashville's MLS soccer team and music-related marketing for DAOU Vineyards in Paso Robles, California, as well as work in the healthcare, financial, and consumer goods industry. And joining Kerry as our featured guest today is Mr. Chris Gantry. Chris was best friends with Chris Christopherson. He worked for and recorded with Johnny Cash. He chased girls and wrote with Shel Silverstein in Key West. He was on stage at Woodstock with Tom Harden. He took peyote and fired machine guns in the desert with Dennis Hopper. And he is the last outlaw standing in Nashville. Chris arrived in Nashville in 1963 after landing a recording contract in New York City at the age of 14, and a series of wildly rambunctious but ill-fated college experiences. His Bronx accent immediately signaled he was not a natural Southerner. He paid his dues and became one of the core characters in the emerging singer-songwriter scene that produced the now famous outlaw movement. In 1968, Chris wrote the last song on an album he was showcasing to Gary Puckett and the Union Gap, who were recording in LA. A local studio guitar player named Glenn Campbell heard the song Dreams of an Everyday Housewife and immediately recorded it. It was Campbell's version that went on to become a huge national hit. Today, Chris remains in Nashville, the last of that eclectic crew from the early 60s. He hones his craft by releasing new content on a daily basis. Every day, it takes many forms: finished songs, lyrics, beat poetry, social commentary. In 2012, he released his book, Gypsy Dreamers in the Alley. Filmmaker Demetria Kalodimos has just finished a documentary on Chris's colorful life and career. Chris is a national treasure who lives amongst us, creating every day as he has done for the last 57 years. Please welcome Chris and Kerry to today's version of The Smartest People in the Room. Take it away, boys.
All right. Thank you very much, Tom. And thanks for having us. I'll tell you, anytime I get a chance to sit with Mr. Gantry, I will take it. I met him probably 2 years ago in this very room, I think. And over the next 2 years, he has told more stories than we could fit in 5 or 6 of these Who Knew Smartest Man in the Room interviews. Among them, a story about the dog Chandler that allowed Chris to communicate with his deceased favorite dog, Tito. Spending 6 weeks in the desert with Michelle Phillips and Dennis Hopper, shooting any number of firearms. A record that he recorded or wrote after he attended a tribal peyote ceremony in Mexico. So we'll get into some of that, but not all of that. And I look forward to having you all hear from Chris and really introducing you to him if you haven't already had the experience of meeting him. As Tom said, of the outlaw movement, Chris really is the last man standing in Nashville. He is a prolific songwriter and touring artist when there is no virus. For us, he is a national treasure walking around town every day. And as you mentioned, he has a documentary that's about to come out on him. And you've done a beautiful introduction on him and myself. But I'd like to just give you a little bit of taste of that documentary, and we'll play that trailer from the documentary, and then we'll get started.
Kerry, technical difficulties on my end.
No
Sorry.
worries.
Please proceed.
No worries. By the way, that documentary is called The Meaning of Life Is This.
I'll get that back online in a minute.
All right, you want me to keep going?
Yeah, you keep going. Sorry.
All right, let me know when you're ready. I'm gonna start asking you some questions. Chris, you landed in Nashville at a really formative time in music, not just country music, but in music in general, getting here in 1963. I think you had a recording contract at the age of 14. Where'd you come from, and what drew you to country in Nashville?
I came from Queens, New York, and in Queens, New York, it's a real inner city New York lifestyle. And when I was a young guy growing up in the bricks, I call them the bricks, when I was living in the bricks, you either heard Bing Crosby, Frank Sinatra, Rosemary Clooney on one station, or you heard the emerging or the doo-wop era of all the street corner Italian guys singing love songs to their girlfriends. So I was kind of in the middle of that. But there was something that I heard on a radio station that came out of upstate New York, a little country music station, which was rare in New York. They'd really never heard it themselves in the inner city, but upstate, you could hear it. And the first people I ever heard were the Louvin brothers and Bill Anderson. And these guys were singing songs with lyrics that I never heard of, about being possessed by the devil and old women with guns who were going crazy in shacks in the mountains and people who were drinking themselves to death. I thought to myself, this is something that I can get behind. Finally, I've heard something that means something to me. And so that's how I became interested in country music. And I pursued it from that moment on. And it's brought me to this day, which is like almost 400 years later.
So what, you jumped on a bus and came to Nashville?
Well, I came on a train. The trains actually ran back then. This was before cell phones and the internet. And you took a train out of Penn Station and you rode for 2 agonizing days in a coach car and got off at Union Station down here on Broadway. And you got out with your bags and you had big eyes the size of moons, and you looked around saying, where am I? What is this place? But I was here, and I actually never left. So the beauty of it is that it was all about destiny, and it was all about how the configurations of my life all came together at the right place, at the right moment, at the right time.
Well, how did you end up connecting with, what we call the Outlaws? And by the way, what is an outlaw to you? An
outlaw to me is just a guy who is not afraid to write a song if he's got a problem of an overeating problem, if he's or his wife is sleeping with somebody else, or he has just problems that we all go through. But it's being able to sing that in a song and not care if anybody records it or anybody cares about it. It's just somebody who is connecting with their art on a visceral level and wants to express themselves in ways that nobody else is doing. And that's just being normal. So if there's such a thing as an outlaw, it's just a person who's just being everyday normal and not trying to write songs that make them famous or make tons of money.
So how'd you end up with the outlaw movement here in Nashville?
Well, when I got here, there were about 5 or 6 people who had come in from the outlands and the outlying states to find the meaning of life. And those people hit the streets during the time of the revolution of the 60s. And they came here to find it. Chris Christopherson, Vince Matthews and Eddie Rabbitt, and Tom Gent, and Tony Joe White, and Donnie Fritz, and Billy Swan. These guys were all looking to find the pot of gold, man, that they searched for, that was within themselves, so they could write songs that express themselves in different ways, in different forms that had never been heard of before.
So when you got here, I mean, Johnny Cash was already sort of an emerging legend.
He was an emerging legend.
Yeah. So how did you meet him, and tell us a little bit about that intersection with you and Johnny, and how you approached him and what advice he gave you, and then we'll venture from there.
Well, on Music Row, there used to be a place called Wally's Professional Club. And it was right across the street from Tally Ho Tavern. During the day, everybody drank at the Tally Ho Tavern, but at night they crossed the street and gathered around the round table over there at Wally's Professional Club. And everybody would go over there and trade songs and pass the guitar around the table. You'd hear the hits before they became the hits. And Johnny Cash walked in one night off the road. He was a skinny guy from living hard. He looked like a Q-tip, and he had a little hat on, and he was beat. And he walked back to the pool hall, put the quarters in the machine, started to shoot some pool. And I recognized him because he had been a hero of mine since being a young kid in New York, 13, 14 years old. And I timidly walked into the room and kind of hung on the side of the door and watched him a little bit. And then I cleared my throat and I said, "Excuse me, John, my name is Chris. I don't mean to interrupt you, but I've followed your music all these years. And I was wondering if you could tell me, what do you do to be great at this? I came here to be a songwriter. What do I have to do to be great at this art?" And he stopped playing, leaned down his cue, and he said, "Look," he said, "Chris, the only advice I can give you is to be yourself and don't try to be anybody else. Don't try to imitate anybody. Don't try to imitate anybody's voice style or writing style." He said, "We want to hear what you got to say. Want to hear what comes off your pen. That's what I'm interested in, and I think that's what everybody else will be interested in. Just be yourself." And that was really all I needed to hear from somebody who I admired for so long. Since that day, I went out and started to write those songs that meant things to me in my life. My mother, my father, where I came from, what I was feeling, what I was lonely for, what I was longing for, my dreams. And that's how I started to develop as a writer in my own style and my own voice.
So you created, after that, you ended up having a bit of a working relationship, somebody where you appeared on the Cash Show. But then you also ended up doing this is a little bit of an aside, but you ended up doing an album after you had spent a little time in the desert. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I went to work for Johnny Cash in 1972 as a songwriter for his publishing company. And he had this big studio out there. And one day he sidled up to me and he said, "Well, Chris, why don't you use the studio and go on and make an album that you might want to make?" So as soon as he said that, the light bulbs went off, bang. I said, and he told me to do it any way that I wanted to do it. So I didn't really have the songs that I had, that I wanted to record. I knew what I wanted to write. So I went down to Mexico and I looked up an old friend of mine that I had met in Mexico in the early 60s. His name was Jesus Maldonado, and he was a one-legged guy. And Jesus lived with his wife in Oaxaca. So I went to Oaxaca and I found his house. He had given me the address to his place years ago and I never lost it. And I figured he was still there. Knocked on the door. Jesus comes to the door, Jesus, and he says, "Come on, we have to go." And it was almost like he was expecting me. And this was like years and years later. I said, "What are you doing?" "I just got here." He said, We've got to go." And so we jumped in his Jeep and we rode all the way to Oaxaca, and he was taking me to a mitote, which is a peyote ceremony. And so we got there at night, and we all got in this circle, and we all drank water, and everybody prayed. Then they started passing around the peyote. And I ate about 2 or 3 big, enormous buds and got sick, of course. But then about 3/4 of an hour later, I left the building. I was in a totally different universe and world, and all of a sudden I was having visions of things and talking to myself and having extreme insights into problems and things about my life and the future and everything. And so I had a guitar and a pad there, and as I'd come back in, I'd write things down. Well, during that night, I wrote almost 6 of the songs that I recorded on John's album that he let me do. And wrote them all, scribbled them all down, madly putting melodies to them, and then flipping out and coming back and walking around and talking about, and everybody was doing the same thing, but nobody knew anybody was there except themselves. So coming back from Mexico, I came back with 6 completed songs, and I had 4 of those songs that I was thinking of, and I finished those when I got to Nashville, went in the studio, and probably made the wildest album that I have ever made in my entire life. But the crazy thing about it is that after I made it, John listened to it. He and June listened to it one night. And he came up to me a few days later after he listened to the album, and he said, "Well, Chris, June and I went into the studio last night, and we listened to your record, and I want to tell you, son, that I don't even think that the drug people are going to understand it." So when he said that, I felt good about it because I knew I had transcended the times, and I had taken a leap above the drug people. And, but then the album got lost for like almost 40 years, got lost. And we found it again 3 years ago. His son called me and said, "We were hunting around in a vault out here, and we found this box of tapes, and your name is on it." I said, "That's the record. I thought it was gone. I thought it got lost somewhere." So we got the tapes back, sent them to Drag City Records in Chicago. They flipped out over it, and they put it out 2 years ago.
All right, tell us a little bit about how you and Chris Christopherson got connected and got to be such pals.
In 1964, I signed a publishing deal with a great songwriter, Mary John Wilkin. She wrote Long Black Veil and PT 109 and Waterloo by Stonewall Jackson, and One Day at a Time, Sweet Jesus. She was a great songwriter, but she saw something in me, and she thought she could develop me into the right place. So she signed me. 1964. It was called Buckhorn Music. And her son was Bucky Wilkin, who was Little GTO. Little GTO, Bucky Wilkin. And so I went to work for Mary John, but in the meantime, to make extra money, I was playing down at Skull Schulman's in Printers Alley at the Rainbow Room, which is a whole other story.
Totally other story.
But anyway, I'm playing music on stage one night, and Mary John walks into the club, and she's got a guy in an army uniform, and she walks up to the stage, and I stop playing. And she said, "Chris, I hope I don't mean to interrupt you, but I just wanted you to meet this gentleman. His name is Chris Christopherson. He's been sending me tapes, and I like his songs. And when he gets out of the army in 3 months, he's going to come to work for us." So he came up to the stage, and he looked at me, and I looked at him, and we shook hands, and there was a little bit of a interplanetary lightning bolt that swirled around the room, and we zeroed in on each other, and that was it. 3 months later, he showed up in town with a trailer. I went over to his house and helped him move all his junk out of the trailer into an apartment with his family. And for the next 3 years, We saw each other every day at Buckhorn Music, writing songs, crazy, wild, day and night, endless, endless. 3, 4 songs a day, never stopped. It was beautiful. It was art in its finest, rarest, most crazy, wild, beautiful form.
Okay, how about Shel Silverstein? A lot of people think of Shel Silverstein as the author of a number of children's books, but I have been to studios in LA where his albums are up on the walls, and I mean, he was a prolific writer as well. I mean, you have some pretty crazy exploits. Some of them we don't have to cover here, but some you might want to touch on with you and Shel.
Well, Shel, as you know, grew up with Hugh Hefner, and when Hugh started the Playboy Club and Shel got out of the Army, Shel came to live in the Playboy Mansion in Chicago and lived there for almost 11 years and partook of the fruits of the club and traveled a lot and sent his stories and poetry back, which was printed in Playboy. And then Shel made his way to Music City because he was also writing songs. The first place he showed up at was Combine Music, where all the scallywags and the rogues and the Hellions hung out, the great writers, Christopherson and Tony Joe and Tony Joe White, Pope Salad Annie, all that crew. And I met Shel at Combine, and we connected because we were both Northerners, and we started talking, and we became buds on the spot, and we became friends for years and years. Lived in Key West together for 6 years too.
Was it there where our wife came from?
My wife?
Yeah,
I got married there. Susan Nadler, great novelist. She had just gotten out of jail for smuggling hashish out of Israel into Mexico. She got busted in Mexico. It's so weird because she usually smuggled dope out of Mexico into Israel, but she smuggled it out and got caught and got busted and got sentenced 7 years in Mexican prison. Just got out. She came to Key West. She walked into a poetry gallery where I was reading wild poetry, and we met, and that's where we met. But I really met her because Shel was trying to date her and had her phone number written on his hand. And I saw him in a restaurant and stole the number off his hand and called her. She lives in Nashville now too. She's partners with Helen Shriver, and she's writing books.
All right, one more in the exploits section of this interview, with the Dennis Hopper era, when you went to the desert with Dennis Hopper at his compound.
Okay, quick. Dennis came to Nashville to go to the Grand Ole Opry, and he was hanging with Chris Christopherson. I met him backstage at the Opry. He said, "Chris, why don't you come on out and see me? I live out in Taos, New Mexico." Gave me the address. I was so flipped out about meeting Dennis Hopper because he was James Dean's closest friend. And I had been a childhood fan of Dennis's, seeing him in different series on TV. And it blew my mind. So I ran home and packed, threw my crap in the truck, and I headed out and I beat into the house.
This was right after Easy Rider.
This is right after Easy Rider, and when he had finished the last movie, and he was editing that movie on his place at the famous Mabel Dodge Lujan farm out in Taos, New Mexico. And he bought that place and lived there with a crazy cast of characters, man. So I showed up at the farm. I welcomed him back to his house. And at the time, Michelle Phillips was living there with her young daughter, China. And stunt people were in and out from Hollywood. And it was just one of the wildest scenes you could ever imagine. Dennis was always afraid that the farm was going to be raided by Chicanos. So he had a massive gallery of guns and ammunition. And every day we'd go out to the rifle range and practice shooting and becoming expertise with machine guns. And but we'd at night at the table for supper, big round table, everybody would sing songs. Everybody would be trading songs, and it was a great artistic experience for me as a young guy to hang around Dennis Hopper.
Well, Tom, I think you've got that video queued up. If you want to play that for us, just as a little recap on the exploits and a little video intro into Chris.
I'll be right there with that. Thank you for indulging my technical problem.
Not a problem.
Give me one moment.
All right.
Kerry, tell the audience again what this is.
So this is a trailer for the documentary on Chris's life called This is the Meaning of Life, or The Meaning of Life is This. And Demetria Kaladimas, who was longstanding TV news anchor here in town, has produced this with her company, The Filming Station. And this is just the sort of teaser to that documentary.
All right, here we go.
I'm proud that he's with us tonight. Let's welcome Chris Gantry.
My music is given to me. It's the angel comes into the room. I don't know what it's going to be. There's no song titles written down on a piece of paper. There's no catchphrases. There's no idea of who's going to sing this song. It's just creation time. I don't know what it's going to be. I don't know where it's going. I don't know what it's going to do. I don't know what it's going to sound like. I don't know what the words are going to be. This is like an adventure, but I know it's coming. So I pick up my guitar, I hit this chord, and bang, this amorphous shape takes place in my mind. And bang, all of a sudden, I'm on the road. I'm firing through this place, a territory and a terrain that I've never been before. Starts coming out, bang, bang. And I'm going through it, and I don't question it. I don't ask it anything of it. I just get out of the way of it and let that muse work its way down into my core of my soul, and out my guitar, and out my mouth, and through my fingers, and bam, man, an hour later, I got me a song.
I'm so thankful that I was here at the time I was, when you could go on 2 streets and cover all the bases. We got as much a thrill out of somebody listening to San Francisco Maple Joy, or Gantry playing Allegheny, and being able to show him off to Johnny Cash, and these artists helping one another is the way people ought to be.
The meaning of life is this.
So that's just a taste of that documentary to come, but it kind of gives you a feel of some of the texture of Chris and where that thing's going to go. I will say, since I've known you, you've been writing a song a day. I mean, you're the most prolific songwriter I know.
Well, I send them to you, but
Yes, you do. Yes, you do.
At 4 in the morning.
Usually 3:30 something. Yes, that's true. So what's that about having to write a song? I feel like you have to write a song a day.
Well, once I understood the responsibility that goes with being a songwriter, which is different than writing hits and becoming rich and famous, there's a responsibility of using that gift to find the messages that you can get out there that help people. You're supposed to do that. To me, that's the meaning of life. Finding your gift, developing it, and then working it and putting it out there. The gift back, the bread on the waters. And so every day I get up with that intent in mind. I show up with my guitar. I don't know what it's going to do or be. And it just, the muse, the creative spirit, whatever you want to call it, comes into my room and writes me. I become the song. The song writes me.
So what advice would you have for songwriters in Nashville or elsewhere today?
I would say if you're hooked on sitting in writers' rooms, trying to pound out songs on an anvil like a horseshoe, I would say stop that, at least for a time. Go get a motel room, take a good bottle of Tito's vodka with you, and stay there for a week. Get rid of your cell phone and your laptop, or get a writing pad, and get in touch with your own sensibilities. Stay there, stay there, stay there, and get in touch with who you are. And after a few days, you'll find stuff starting to seep out of your pen and realm of thought that you never knew was in there, because you never gave yourself up to yourself. And you find out who you are and what you're made of, and you'll find your own voice and you'll find your own style. And when you come back to Nashville after that, you'll have a whole different perspective about songwriting. And if it stays with you and you carry it with you for the next 50 years, you'll end up in the same place I am, sitting in a room with a couple of great guys who have a vision that there's something here, and we're doing this with you, and this is what it's all about.
Well, since I've known you, you have been perhaps the most prolific creative machine that I've known in a long time. But it's not always songs.
It's not always songs.
So there is some of that 60s sensibility and creative outlet that has come along with you today. And some of that is beat poetry.
Beat poetry.
And I would just love it if you would do one of those for us. My favorite is The Tear.
Okay.
If you could do that. Okay. Sit back for a second.
Take a breath, folks. This is the meaning of everything. I hope I can remember the meaning of everything. This is called Tear. A tiny drop rolled off a leaf and fallen free and fast. Thought, what bliss, what peacefulness, how long does this life last? A tiny child sat underneath, a cup fixed in his hand, half filled with cool, clear water, and where the drop might land. Close by, 1 trillion years away, a man was burning leaves, the ashes floating skyward, blackened wisps upon the breeze. They passed the falling drop and smiled and waved and cried aloud. They said, come in, join with us. We're going up to make a cloud. The tiny drop huffed and yelled. He said, my place in fate's not up. My destiny is fallen, with a plop inside that cup. And just then a passing fly called, hi, old friend from my last life. Remember me, the thirsty gnat, and you the piece of ice? I've always been a falling drop. The drop plunged on to say, you never used to be a gnat. You're just a fly today. And turning inward, he closed his ears while keeping on his course. He never heard the wind come riding up upon his horse. Hello there, drop, the wind announced, and the drop recoiled from fear and cried, please don't blow me from my path. Why, eternity is near. Why, eternity is everywhere, the laughing wind did wheeze, and my destiny is blowing you into those burning leaves. But before the tiny drop could cry, there was the softest sizzle, and the tender voice of Mother Fire said, welcome, little drizzle. Soon I must be going out. My destiny is near. But you, my son, the magic one, must be the perfect tear. Well, the tiny drop felt restful as he looked down on the sky, and he thought, whoa, I have the feeling that I'm in somebody's eye. This must be affection, such a feeling's just begun. I'm slowly rolling down a cheek and splashing on the sun. And this, my friend, is just a tale of cups and drops and dreams where whatever happens, happens is the way it seems to seem. And never are you fixed, but rather always going on like splashing tears that take the form of dew upon the dawn.
I love it.
There you go.
I love it. Back to music a little bit. You know, there is, of all your songs, one stands out because it was a big hit. A lot of people seem to request that when you play. And that one you mentioned, Tom, was Dreams of the Everyday Housewife. I'd love you to play that and then talk a little bit about the gestation of that, how it got to Glenn Campbell.
I originally wrote it as a waltz. It sounded like a Strauss waltz or a Liszt. My father was a concert pianist. These kind of melodies got into me back then. They still do. While she looks in the mirror, stares at the wrinkles that weren't there yesterday, and thinks of the young man that she almost married. What would he think if he saw her this way? She pulls up her apron in little girl fashion. Something comes in to her mind. Slowly starts dancing, remembering her girlhood and all of the boys she had waiting in line. Such are the dreams of the everyday housewife, you see everywhere, any time of the day. Like the everyday housewife who gave up the good life for me. Why the photograph album she takes from the closet, slowly turns the page, carefully picks up the crumbling flower, the first one he gave her, now withered with age. While she closes her eyes and touches the house dress that suddenly disappears. And just for the moment, she's wearing the gown, the book all their minds back so many years. Such are the dreams of the everyday housewife you see everywhere, any time of the day. Like the everyday housewife who gave up the good life for me. Like the everyday housewife who gave up the good life for me.
Thank you. Well done. So that was not originally a song for Glenn Campbell.
No, it was a song for a last album that, the first album that I did on Monument Records in 1968, and we needed one more song. I only had 9 songs, and Fred Foster told me I needed one more song. So I ran back to the house. I had about 2 days to get it down, and I'm just thinking, and I'm married at the time, and I'm upstairs in my room in the attic, and I'm listening to all the commotion downstairs, and I'm thinking, oh, there's an American housewife down there. She's an American. And it started like that. Such are the dreams of the American. And I said, that doesn't sound right. So I started fooling with it, and 20 minutes later, I had that song.
Unbelievable.
And I was young then. I mean, I was 26 or 27 then. So I was writing songs that meant something then.
But you showcased it not for Glenn, but for Gary Puckett.
I showcased it for Gary Puckett of the Union Gap. Jerry Fuller was in town, who was looking for songs for the Union Gap, and a friend of mine heard the song and brought it to him. He said, "No, I love that." So he took it out to California, and Gary Puckett recorded it with the Wrecking Crew, the famous Wrecking Crew of California. And Glenn Campbell was the guitar player on that session. And he heard the song, and he had just had a couple of hits out himself. He went in and recorded the song 2 days later, stole it right out of underneath Gary Puckett, and that was it. He put the song out, and bang, it just took off. This was after Gentle on My Mind, and by the time I get to Phoenix, it was number 3. So,
Unbelievable.
don't
So-
get no better than that.
No, not at all. So I've spent time with you, in the last couple of years. We've had some hangouts up here. You seem pretty mellow to me. So my question is, other than your regular glass of Tito's vodka, down here at the Standard Club, are you still an outlaw? Are you?
I'm still writing.
You've had some exploits and some hell raising, but here you are.
I'm still the quintessential outlaw. I am still the outlawish outlaw. I've gone past that a couple of jumps. I don't do anything musically that anybody tells me to do. If they suggest something and it comes from the person whose suggestions I respect, then that's something else. But I don't let anybody tell me how to write poetry, music, short stories, posts, you name it. I mean, I'll be honest with you. I don't do that because my music is given to me. It is a gift from another spirit, a creative spirit. And I always tell everybody I'm not smart enough to write the songs I write. I really am not. I got kicked out of all my schools and all my colleges and everything. And I think I've been looked at as a responsible conduit for the creative spirit, and they know I'll do the right job. They know I'll do the right thing by it. They give it to me. It's all gifts.
I love it. Well, speaking of Tito's vodka,
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about the tattoo on your arm that relates to Tito's vodka?
Well, I had a great little dog named Tito, and I'll show it to you.
Here we go. This is the stripping portion of the
This is
show.
the strip show. Tito, my little beautiful, great Chihuahua friend who I lived with for 9 years. And he taught me to be a better man. He taught me to be a better person. He taught me about integrity and dignity and respect, gentility, peacefulness, gentleness. I was more of a rabble rouser before Tito, and Tito ground me down and showed me the right way to live. And when he passed, I realized that I was the guy on the leash the whole time, and he had been the master. And that's the way it is, especially when you have a little dog or a dog, it doesn't matter. They teach you stuff, and they are beautiful teachers, they're angels. So after Tito, and I put that tattoo on me, I gravitated toward Tito's vodka. First because I liked the label, and then I liked the drink.
So quickly, give us a little of the story about the dog channeler related to Tito.
When Tito passed,
Yeah.
when he passed, I was so heartbroken and so grief-stricken that I couldn't get out of bed for like a few weeks. I just stayed in bed and stayed under the covers, and I moaned and I cried, and my greatest friend in the world was gone. So I asked somebody, I said, is there such a thing as an animal communicator? I know there was people who did seances and all that stuff. They said, well, yeah, there's a person that I know. You call this number. I called her up, and she was a woman that lived down in Alabama. She said, send me a picture of Tito and send me $75. I said, oh, here comes the big scam. But at that time, it didn't matter. So I sent her the $75. I sent her a picture of Tito. I didn't hear from her for about 2 months. I said, well, I got taken for $75. All of a sudden, one day I get a phone call. It's her on the phone. She says, hey, I'm here with Tito, And he's yipping and jumping all around the place and excited that we're going to have this conversation. We're going to talk.
Now, remembering that Tito is no longer.
Yeah, he's in the afterlife. But she communicated with him, and his spirit was in the room. So she told me everything he told me, how to live. He told me what he'd been thinking about the whole time since he left. I wrote everything down, and I took those writings and I pasted them all up on the apartment of my walls, and they stayed there for years. After that phone call and Tito, there was closure, and I felt great. To this day, I feel wonderful about Tito.
That's a story I have not heard before. So, do you mind doing one more song for us, and then we can take any questions folks have?
No, man.
We want to do, this is a little bit of a departure from the typical lexicon, but I love this one.
Oh, this is a departure. This song is about an Alabama boy who lives in a trailer who's a Donald Trump fan, and he's a hard ankle down there in little past West Memphis, Arkansas, down in there a little bit. His name is Whackbone. Whackbone. I learned how to play guitar in Nashville too. I Whackbone living in a rundown trailer. 2 pit bulls and a woman named Kitty Cat. Sitting in a lawn chair out in the front yard. Smoking a joint in a bright red Donald Trump hat. The face of America, totally stoned. A good old redneck Alabama daddy named Whackbone. Whackbone. White kitty cat wearing a thrift store moo-moo. Steps outside with a frying pan full of hot grease. While she dumps it in the dirt and yells at Whackbone. Why, come on, get your butt in the house, it's time to eat. White food stamp sausage, yellow corn pone, grilled for a king and a Alabama hotshot Whackbone. A Whackbone only has groundhog stew, star-spangled banner and barbecue. Mess with this woman and it will cut you like a fish on a hot flat stone. Wow, Whackbone. Well, Whackbone got no ruckus uptown in a crummy old bar with a man named Leroy Krause. When Leroy says something lewd about Kitty Cat, why that night Whackbone burned down Leroy's house. Why Leroy clenched his fist and moaned, I'm gonna kill that some bitch, Whackbone. Leroy's 2 sons, Lonnie and Jocko. Why 12-gauge shotgun standing in Whackbone's yard. Whackbone's pit bulls, Cain and Abel. Why hit them boys from behind and hit them hard. Gnashing teeth, yelps and moans. Old man screaming, go on, stick it with Whackbone. Whackbone only has groundhog stew, star-spangled banner on barbecue. Mess with this woman and it will cut you like a fish on a hot flat stone. Whackbone.
I love it. I love it. Awesome. So before we close, Chris, besides this documentary that he's doing, he's in the process of really putting together an album that he kind of sees as his legacy recording album. He's also got a book he's working on. He's written several others, including this one here, Gypsy Dreamers in the Alley. But he's got a new book that's all about the outlaw Bible and sort of the philosophy of songwriting he's talked about a little bit. But in terms of that album, and if we weren't in the situation we're in, he'd be out on the road and I wouldn't see him. But he's looking to record this legacy piece. And if there are folks out there who know of people who would like to sponsor that or help assist, that would be fabulous. And just before we take any questions, I will say we did have a little shot of the old Four Roses before we started. And cheers, Mr. Gantry.
Cheers.
Same to you, Tom.
It's to you, Tom.
Back at you guys with my water here.
Same thing. Not
That
really.
was fabulous. So we've got a couple good questions from the audience, and one goes back to Chris, the album, the lost album from the Johnny Cash archives.
Yes, sir.
Can you share with us, were you able to reclaim your copyrights on all that material, and have you been properly protected on that?
To be honest with you, I haven't really looked into that. I know Dreams of the Everyday Housewife is tied up for a little bit of time, but I have hundreds and hundreds of songs from those days that are probably recoupable and should come back into my possession.
Well, there's a number of well-known music attorneys who are loyal followers of this series. I have a feeling you may get a phone call or an email from one or more of them wishing to help you. I have a feeling that will happen. Stay tuned.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Thank you.
Yeah. I've got 1,000 questions, but the thing that I really just want to say is how much I appreciate you and the journey you've taken us on today. When you were playing that last song a moment ago, I felt like I was on downtown on Lower Broadway, and you took us back to a pre-COVID time, and just, it was remarkable. And thank you. I've missed that so much. I feel like a plant that's received water. And I know the audience feels the same way.
Well, that's good because, once again, for any songwriters that are out there that might be listening, this whole thing is about finding out who you are, man, and developing your talent and becoming a solo writer in your own right that changes the world. That's why you're a songwriter. You have the ability to change things. A 3-minute song that can break you down in 3 minutes and build you back up again at the end of the song where you're not the same person anymore. That's the mark of a great, great song, man. And songs have been known to do that.
Well, right on. Well, listen, gentlemen, unfortunately, we are out of time, but I want to say thank you to Kerry for your mastery as an interviewer.
Yeah.
So much respect for you and love you. And Chris, this has been such a pleasure to meet you and to present you to our audience. I know you got a lot of new fans today, and hopefully we can help.
I hope so.
I hope we can help you with that recording project. And as I said, there's a number of attorneys downstream that may be able to help you with some of the other publishing and copyright related issues.
Well, it's been an honor, man. Thank you so much. It's always an honor to do this for people, man. That's what it's about.
Well, right on. Folks, I want to wrap up with my customary sign off, and that is I want to remind our viewers that on Thursday at the same time, we will be presenting another event. This week, we are featuring Mark Cates, and Jim Griffin returns in the interviewer seat. That's going to be an interesting review of some 90s rock all the way through present day and future rock. So definitely tune in for that. Also, please wear a mask, because the sooner you wear a mask, the sooner we can see treasures like Chris performing live. And I can't wait to do that with everyone. So be safe. Vote on November 3rd. Take care.
All right.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you, Tom.